So first thing I want to do is introduce Dan properly, and then let's start asking him a few questions about working on this production and working in the industry. So Dan is a master of storytelling through objects. With over 4 decades in the film industry, he's brought some of the most iconic props to life on screen, like Doctor Who's sonic screwdriver, Harley Quinn's Goodnight Bat. Dan's also the creator of what I personally think is one of the most iconic movie props of all time, the legendary Jumanji board game. Heritage Auctions describes it as a supreme example of studio craftsmanship, arguably the most beautifully made film prop we've ever encountered. Dan's career spans a remarkable range of productions, from helping create the eerie atmosphere of The Cabin in the Woods to the worlds of Deadpool 2, Suicide Squad, and Battlestar Galactica. Along the way, he's collaborated with celebrated directors such as Christopher Nolan and Tim Burton, and he's worked with stars including Al Pacino, David Bowie, and Katharine Hepburn, who herself represented a direct connection to Hollywood's golden age. Based in Vancouver, Dan's creative influence extends well beyond the set, shaping immersive spaces and artistic environments that continue to reflect his lifelong passion for visual storytelling. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the Prop Masters Guild for putting this on and promoting what prop masters do, telling stories with objects. So thank you very much.
Well, it's amazing, and we're gonna take questions from the group here. But first, I want to ask you a couple myself. If you don't mind to first tell us a little bit about the props that we have here in the cases that we're looking at.
Well, I think the thing that makes me happiest is that we have a bit of Robin Williams here. So the bust that you see is, it was gifted to me by Kent Allen Jones, who was the sculptor on Jumanji. He was an amazing sculptor, very talented man. And we were wrapping up the studio space, and I think this was the first one he'd cast, and he handed it to me, and as a gift. And this is would have been the head on the statue of the town square that we shot at Keene. And we also used it as the head of the bust that's unveiled in the mansion. And of course there's Robin's chair and chair back. In the case here, we've got on the left, it's sort of a presentation game. It's got a wood case. I think after, anybody who wants to put on a pair of white cotton gloves and they can hold it, we can take some pictures with that if you like, if you're interested in doing that. I think that might be nice. The one that's on the stand is actually this would have been a game that we would have used in the attic sequence. When the attic splits apart and the game falls, we actually did that. We knew that was going to be a bad day, no matter how well we prepared for it. So we made a number of these out of like a resin material, and a lot of them were destroyed that day. A lot of them were just smashed to pieces. Probably one of the most stressful days of my career. I had a table set up pretty much where the cement floor was at the Bridge Studios, with every glue imaginable. So I had hot glue guns, I had cyanacrylic glue, I had all sorts of stuff, and the games would fall. We had planned to put a net to catch the games as they fell. The camera kept changing position, and eventually it was looking almost straight down. The net was removed, and so we damaged a lot of cool things that day. But anyway, that one made it, and another one made it too. Another one was sold at auction a couple years ago in Los Angeles. So a couple of them made it. Most of them just went back to Sony in pieces. There's another faceplate here that's got a story to it regarding the Hunter Van Pelt. Originally, Van Pelt was going to be a different actor. The fellow that we see on the screen today wasn't going to be Van Pelt. It was another man, a man that we'd all met. We'd fitted his costume, we fitted his props, I fitted, the rifle, made sure everything was working, his rings, whatever. And he looked really different from the fellow we have here. And about a week before we were going to start making the movie, he had a family tragedy. His mother passed away. He was devastated, and he withdrew from the movie. And by then, I already had all of my games were made up with his face on it. I was already in Boston. We were going to start shooting the Keene scenes. We were days away from photography. We did an emergency resculpt of the face. FedExed them to me. It was the night before we were going to start making the movie. There was like a pre-production party at some bar in Keene, and everyone was going to it. And I basically stayed in my motel room and I glued the new faceplates in to the existing board game. So we never ever photographed the wrong face. We caught it just in time the day before. But if you want to, next time you're up at the front, before you leave, whatever, you can see that there's a different face on these two different panels. And then there's the crew photo. That was the first movie I'd worked on where there were so many crew members that we just didn't all pose for the picture. There were so many people involved that it's sort of a montage, and that's kind of cool. There's an example of the shoebox. There's some notes. There's some of my notes and scripts and things, and then there's a catalog right up on the board game for something that sold in Dallas in December. So that's kind of what's there.
Okay, that's great. So I know we're here to talk a lot about props, but one question I'm dying to ask you. Robin Williams was so great in this, right? I love him in this movie. He's fabulous. What was he like to work with?
Oh, Robin was great. I mean, he's, everyone's heard stories of the kindness of Robin, right? And it's true. It's absolutely true. Especially, we had kids on set. We had, it was, so there was a bit of a family atmosphere to Jumanji. But there was definitely a kindness to him, a gentleness to him. And I think we were all kind of in awe of him. He was a very famous guy when we worked with him, and I knew about Robin when he was Mork, you know what I mean? Don't ever call him that, by the way. But it was great. I mean, the thing with Robin was that sometimes he would just do his thing, his shtick. He would become the stand-up Robin. And a lot of times it was extremely entertaining, and most of the times it was extremely entertaining. And I think that the times that it was hard was like when I was fixing some things, the boards were always breaking, or the hinges would break, and the token doors would break and things. And so I'd be sitting there like feet away from him, and suddenly he would go into a routine, and it would be, it was fine, but it's hard because you're kind of half listening. What is he going to say, and what's the punchline to this? And so anyway, it was great. He was a great guy. And then I worked with him again on Insomnia, and
great film.
Thanks. Different, it was a few years later. He seemed a little different to me, but he wasn't Alan Parrish in that movie. He was a murderer, he was playing the bad guy, and he didn't do that a lot. He had a few roles as the heavy, so I think that might have been part of it. But fantastic guy.
Okay, well, I'd like to hear some questions from the audience, but when you ask your question, I think for this venue, we can just shout them out from where you are. But when you ask your question, if you also have a favorite movie prop, we'd love to hear what that is as well. And so, Dan, I want to ask you, other than something you've worked on, what's another movie prop that you admire?
Well, the one that's on my business card is the Maltese Falcon. Like I've always loved that movie. I've got a replica of it in the house. It's like I like to watch that movie every 6 months. To me, that's my favorite. That's the golden age movie prop anyway, is the Maltese Falcon.
Well, I'll just tell you mine. Is that my non-Dan prop favorite is the Book of the Dead from Evil Dead.
Oh.
It's not just me. Yeah, I love that. It's such a cool prop.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take it to the group here. Does anybody out there have a question that you want to ask Dan? I see a hand right there.
Hi. I don't know what my favorite movie prop is, but my question is, in the scene with the grocery store at Sir Save-A-Lot, how many of those items in the grocery store were props, and how much of that was actual merchandise from a grocery store?
Okay, great question. So there's a delineation, right? What prop people do and what set deck people do, and so really, Sir Save-A-Lot, set deck was a huge set deck thing. So there was, we took over a discount. I think it was a Sand department store at the time, and had gone out of business. So set deck brought in tons of stuff that would appear on the shelves. My involvement was, I know I did a lot of work with the paint cans. I know that I did the whole gag with the where Peter makes the little V2 or V1 rocket out of the canoe and this with it. That was definitely me, and special effects, right? Effects had a huge part to do with that. And so Joe would pull me aside, and we knew we had to come up with a gizmo, some way of upending Van Pelt and distracting him. So that was probably my biggest thing there, other than the props that we'd already seen before in the movie. Yeah.
More questions? Oh, over on the right there.
Yeah, I guess I'd first say my favorite movie prop, which would be probably all the creepy TVs from Videodrome.
Excellent. That's cool.
My question, though, would be, what was the prototyping process like for the board? Did they have a really clear idea for exactly what they wanted, or was there a lot of iteration?
When I was brought on, we had a pretty long prep on Jumanji for a couple reasons. One was that it was a show that needed prep. Obviously, there was a lot of thought put into this show, like not just the board game, I'm talking about the mansion. The mansion was this magnificent structure and carefully crafted and all the other things. But when I got on board, when they hired me, there was absolutely nothing physical. There was some sketches. We were, there's a lot of things to think about, right? Like the game needs to have a presence on screen, so it needs to be large, preferably large. But Bradley, little boy Peter, Bradley Pierce was a small 11-year-old. Like, he wasn't a big 11-year-old. He was a small. He looked like he was 9 maybe when you were standing next to him. And so we had to think about him, and he carries it around a lot. And like, I just noticed it even watching it today, how big the board is when a kid is holding it, right? So we had those considerations. We knew that it opened up. We knew that, how do we reveal the rules? So some sketches, some drawings. I got involved with prototyping things pretty quickly. One of the things that really bothered us about the game as it appears was that when you're looking at it and it says, when it's closed and it says Jumanji, cool, you open it and now the rules are 90 degrees off, right? And that bothered us. We talked about that a lot, and we decided it's fine. We'll just get the kids to just shift it. And you watch the movie, Kristen opens it up. It says Jumanji, she opens it up and just slides it, and it's very natural, and she worked it out really, really great. Another thing, people bug me about this. So they'll say all of the stops. How there's there's a track and there's delineations and stops along the way. Someone actually, I'm sure many people have actually paused the movie, counted each individual stop along the way, and noticed that that they're not all the same. That some of the tokens have to travel further than some of the other ones. But anyway, we didn't think that people were gonna when we made Jumanji, it was all on VHS. You could have paused the VHS and never counted that, right? And now we got 4K. So you're seeing all our mistakes with the 4K.
And you must have made a light version for that Pelican to carry as well, right?
Yeah, so lots of different versions, right? We knew we needed 3 beautiful hand-carved hero boards. They were carved out of African mahogany, and they were really nice. They were beautiful, pieces of furniture. They were really, really great. And we knew that we were going to need some stunt boards, maybe, and then we knew we needed some floating boards. And then the Pelican came along. So the Pelican, I always laugh when I see the movie because there's really only one wide shot where you see it all, the Pelican and the rock that the Pelican is sitting on. But the Pelican was a puppet. And it was like a classic, it had an armature and it had cables and wires and all these things. And it was fairly articulated. It was all the puppets were magnificent in the movie, I think. And so there was 5 guys. There was in this big fiberglass rock that traveled with the Pelican. There's 5 guys crouched underneath this fiberglass rock, and each one has a job to do. One's got the bill opening, and one's got the head shaking, and one's anyway. Yes, we made a lightweight, a really, really lightweight. It didn't hold up very well. It was so light. It was like a styrofoam, and that was what was fitting in the beak, but. Okay, so the same day that we're shooting that scene, when you read the script in Jumanji, You've got the Robin finds the Pelican has the board game. Robin needs to get the board game back. So in the script it says, Alan grabs a fish, right? So we're sitting and we're talking, we're shooting it up at the GVRD. So we can't use a real fish because there's a rule against that. You can't do anything like that there. So okay, I'm gonna make a rubber fish of some sort. And then I'm sitting with Joe, and Joe goes, can you make the fish like wiggle? And I said, sure, yeah, we can do that. We can make it wiggle. So I go back to the guys, and my main prop builder was Brian Dott, who was an amazing guy. And I'm sitting with Brian, and I'm going, we got to make this fish wiggle, and it's got to be in water, so it's got to be waterproof. And okay, how many do we make? How are we gonna make it wiggle? So he comes back to me, like a few days later, and he goes, I got it. I know exactly what to do. And he goes, I know what we can put inside this, because we had the sculpt of the fish, it was like this big and it was fat and whatever. He says, I know what we can do. And so, okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys, commonly known item, you can buy it at most stores, like you can buy it at Walmart, right? And it's what we put inside the silicone fish. Does anybody want to guess what Brian's suggestion was? You're a pervert, and actually, a couple of you out there are perverts. No, I'm kidding. A vibrator would have worked. It was a battery-operated toothbrush, and so he buys like 6 batteries, and they put like AA batteries, right? And so we know that okay, so it's a problem for prop guys because we can't change the battery because it's silicone, and so we just made 6 of them, and we figured out. So Brian like comes back a week later. And he's got one, and it's like there's this little, he's kind of fashioned it so that the push, there's a little button like where the belly button would be on a fish. I know they don't have belly buttons, and you push the button, and sure enough it would the tail would like go like this, and I'm going, this is amazing, right? So he made one to start with. So I'm going, this is amazing. So that night I take it home, and I fill up my bathtub with water. And because I got to test this thing, right? So I turn I turn it on, and it starts to do this thing, and I put it in the bathtub, and it starts going in a little circle in my bathtub, right? And I'm going, this is amazing, right? So I go back the next day, and I say, it's great, make all of them, make 6. So and then she does, and then we're up at the GVRD, the Pelican, five men underneath, hiding inside the rock. And Betsy Magruder, the first AD, says, Dan, let's do a ready shoot. Let's do the fish. So I walk up and I push the little belly button, and it starts to wiggle. And they say, okay, put the fish in. Let's go action. And I put the fish in, and it just took off. It went for like 20 feet, right? And so they cut, and everybody's laughing. And the guys in the Pelican or the guys in the Rock are getting mad at me because it's like, why are we, anyway. So I run after it, and I'm going, well, now what? So anyway, what we ended up doing was we ran the batteries down, we let it run for about a minute, and then it slowed right down, and we shot it with anyway, so it was a toothbrush.
Do you still have the fish prop, and do you still bathe with it?
I still bathe with it.
Okay, let's get another question. Yes, there.
How much money did it cost to buy all the props?
Oh, that's a really good question. And that is a really good question. You know what? It's in this booklet. I have my budget. My budget is in this booklet, or at least I think it is. I think I brought my budget. I think that the Hero board games, I budgeted just over $3,000 for the Hero board games, which I'm sure I went over on that because they ended up being more complicated than I thought, but I think that was my initial guess. And I made 3 Hero board games, so I think I got $10,000. I think I ended up with like a $50,000 budget to make all the different itinerations of the board. I think my budget in total was about $200,000. But that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, back there.
Yes? Oh.
For the pieces on the board, was the idea that the board was supposed to appear natural just through mostly like removing it in pieces? And was that a practical or a special effect, or did you guys kind of figure that out on the way?
Yes, so it's funny how we did it. So special effects was involved with a lot of things like that. So I made 3 Hero wooden board games. And the prettiest and most perfect of them all, we made little bags for them to go in and then cases for that. So that was like the prettiest of them all was the number one. And that's the one that sold, that's the one that's in the catalog there. Number two didn't quite fit as well, like the doors didn't fit quite as well, maybe didn't get the paint job was slightly different, so we put that was our number two game. And then the number three game that we felt was the least good quality as far as the way the box is opened we called the special effects game, and we actually, that game was only meant to be seen open and only meant for the tokens to be moving. And the way we did the tokens was we cut out the bottom of the board game, and we exposed the playing field, and we traced on the back of the playing field where the track was. And a special effects guy laid on his back. This is like the Pelican guys. He laid on his back, and he had a magnet, and I put magnets in my tokens, and he would just, it's the action, and he would just move it 3 spaces, and he'd move it 3 spaces. And there's something kind of cool about that, because when you watch it, they shoot it really close, and you can see that it's kind of like catching and moving and catching and moving, and it's kind of, how it would look now. It would just, it'd be like a perfect motion, and there's something kind of analog, there's something kind of cool about an analog way of doing things.
Oh, I'm a big fan of practical effects and props.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I noticed like in Jumanji there was a lot of weapons, like the dagger that Robin Williams when he came back from the jungle, and the sword that he used to attack the flower, and asked that Peter were getting at the spiders, and I was just wondering, were all of them real, or were they like real and then like special effects? Because probably a lot of those things, it's like, it would be very heavy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So was it most of it real, or was some of it fake?
Everything was, we would make safe versions of everything. The knife that Alan appears with is one of my favorite things in the movie, because it was, it was one of my first questions, like sitting with Joe. So Joe was, to me, I was a bit, I loved Joe. I was really surprised I got the movie. Like, it was kind of like, I was hoping I'd get the movie, but I didn't think I was gonna get the movie. And so Joe, I was extremely appreciative that Joe trusted me enough to give a stab at this. So whenever I was with Joe, I was kind of in awe. And so it was like, Joe, what's the knife like? What's the knife like? And he goes, let me think about it. And I'm showing him like ideas. Like, I have books and stuff, and I'm going, well, it could be like this, and it could be like that. And he's really not answering me. And then one morning I came to work, and there was this 2 pieces of paper on my desk. I have them. I should have brought them today. I just whatever. But there are these 2 pieces of paper, and one of them is just a little note saying, this is it. This is Joe's. I think it was Betsy Magruder's handwriting. I think it was the first AD's handwriting. Betsy was great. Loved Betsy. And it was basically saying, this is it, Joe's. And then the next piece of paper was a sketch. And it was this perfect, because it was Joe Johnson drawing it, this perfect sketch of an obsidian blade and a bone handle and leather wrap. And I'm going, I got it. Like, once I've got the drawing, now all I gotta do is make the thing, right? So I went out to the Museum of Anthropology, and there was this guy, and I called him and I told him what I was doing. He said, come and see me. And in the Museum of Anthropology, I don't know if they have it now, but they used to have what was called a chipping room. And it's basically, it was logs in a circular, like a little circular shape, maybe 4 logs in kind of a circle or square, I guess. And you walk in, and it's just, the floor is just covered with like shards of glass, shards of naturally occurring glass obsidian. And he said, put on some goggles. And I had the drawing. And we basically both, like with pieces of obsidian and flints, chipped the shape of the original blade. And I thought that was super cool, because it was kind of like, it was very real. It wasn't like a sculptor didn't do it sort of thing. So anyway, we sat around and did a bunch of shapes, and a couple of them looked really, really good. And then once I had the blade, back to Brian Dott, the rubber fish guy, and he kind of sculpted me a perfect little handle for it. And if you look at the drawing, if we do this again in a few years or whatever, I'll bring a knife, I'll bring the drawings, and you will see that with the genesis of the drawing from Joe, the prop looks exactly like that. So that just is, having a drawing is, especially from the director, not translating through a design department of some sort, is a dream I think a dream for a prop master.
Yeah, and I was also wondering with the sword that Robin Williams actually gets to attack the flower, was that one sword or was that a couple of swords?
Oh, we usually don't have one of anything unless we're in like we're having a problem, kind of a thing, or no, I forget what we had. I know I probably would have had 3 real swords. They probably weren't sharp ever. They were probably, it was a civil war.
Yeah, I noticed like in the movie, like throughout the movie, there was like a lot of cars and a lot of glass being broken. So
Yes.
that must have taken like a lot of takes.
It did.
And a lot of safety precautions to make sure no one's hurt.
Absolutely.
And then I also noticed, like, when the hunter goes into the guts store, were those real guts?
Yeah, most of them were. Yeah,
That was a great scene.
that's funny.
That was a very funny
Yeah,
scene.
it is funny.
I got a kick out of that. More questions? Okay, up on the left there. Yes, you.
Yeah. Were you aware during prep of how big this movie was going to be, or was that something that sort of just happened afterward?
That's a question that gets asked, like when you're on a show, do you know it's going to be a good show? Do you know it's going to be a bad show? I've been on a lot of shows where I've known it's going to be a bad show, and I was pretty right. I always believed in Jumanji. I knew that it was special when I read it. When they interviewed me, I don't have the time frame really clear in my head, but they interviewed me, and I thought the interview went really well, and then I didn't hear from them forever, for a long time. And I thought, I guess I didn't get it. But I also didn't hear that someone else got it. So I kind of held out my hopes. And I actually turned down some other things that came along. One was a Tom Selleck movie. Tom Selleck came to town and did a movie that none of us will know the name of. So, you know what I mean, that kind of a thing. But I remember.
I feel like I want to see it now.
Yeah, it might have been a movie of the week or something. I don't know. I remember getting an offer for a Tom Selleck movie, and I'm sitting there waiting for the phone to ring for Jumanji, and I'm going, Anyway, I said no to the Tom Selleck movie. Long story short, I always believed in Jumanji, right? And one of the reasons it took so long for them to decide is because they were having trouble finding Alan Parrish. They were talking to all sorts of different people. You said you knew, who did you think it was going to be? You said you read somewhere that it was.
Yeah, I can't remember the list of cast that they had up for it. There was a lot of people up for it.
We were hearing it was going to be Nicolas Cage. We were going to work every day and going, it's going to be Nicolas Cage, and he just has to sign the deal. And then I remember, and then the show went in. Actually, the show actually went down, and they didn't send the department heads home, but they sent most people home and said, we're not sure if this is ever going to happen. And I remember I was out. I don't know, I went out for dinner, it was a Sunday. This is back when we had answering machines at home. And I got home from dinner and there was a red light and I pressed it. And it was the art director of the movie. And he said, it's Robin Williams. And we start in 3 weeks in Keene, New Hampshire. And that was it. It was like we brought everybody back on, and it was just nuts, for 3 weeks, finishing up all the little details, and then getting on planes and flying across to Boston basically, and started shooting. We started with we were in Keene twice, and the beginning of the movie, the very first few days of filming was Keene when it was getting ransacked, when all the looting was happening and everything, and then we went back, and that was the fall, and then we came back in the spring and did the idyllic 1969 opening scenes of the movie with Keene.
Very cool. Next question. Checkered shirt on the left there.
Hey Dan, it's Pete Goodine.
Hey.
Out of all the movies you've done, you've had a long track record. Is this the one? All of us who've been around a long time can look back on one movie and go, that's the one. Is the one of your two?
Is it the one?
Your favorite?
Oh, well, it had the most prominent piece, right? It's the one that people like to talk about the most as far as the actual, you know, it doesn't happen very often where you get like a focal point of the movie is a property, so that was fortunate. But it was kind of early in my career, right? So you know, I think there was some movies later where the craft was better. I did a better craft where I feel like I maybe did maybe more pieces and better crafted pieces. Don't get me wrong, I love what happened here, but you know, a movie that is not a beloved movie, but was a very good movie for me in a creative sense was Suicide Squad. You know, in Toronto, and we had a very visual director on that movie too, David Ayer. I had Ray Lai as my illustrator, who was just hitting home runs all the time with the shows that I was on, and really good craftspeople out of Toronto too. Great people here also. Anyway, so you know, it varies, right? So, but as far as like the sort of the piece, the best known piece, I guess it would be Jumanji.
Yeah, definitely. Right in the middle.
Hey there, bit of a two-parter, but first off, the Little Shop of Horrors prop, which reminded me of like the kind of Venus flytrap thing.
Yeah, great example.
Little Shop of Horrors, so that's one of the that sticks out for me. And second, was there a prop where you spent a lot of time, a lot of money? Okay, we got this together, and then the director's like, F it, we're just gonna make it CGI. Like where you're like, we put all this work, all this money, and they're just gonna CGI it after the end. And second part, what section of Walmart do I find the vibrators in?
Next to the fish.
Okay, so the flower and the puppets. The puppets really weren't. I had nothing to do with the puppets. And I think a lot of different companies worked on the puppets because not all puppets were created equal on Jumanji, in my opinion. So I didn't even know if I know the guys who did the flowers. I thought the flowers looked pretty good. I remember there was a buzz, right? There was like talk in the office about the lion, and we were hearing that the lion was magnificent, and we were hearing that the lion is in transit, and we had heard that the lion had arrived, and so it came in a big crate, and so you know, down we go. The lion's here. Let's go see. And we were all there, standing around, and the construction guys are unscrewing the crate, and they lift it off, and the puppet guys are there too, and the lion was like unbelievable, like into the eye. It was the proportions were gigantic on it. The head was big. And of course, they had perfectly coiffed the hair before they boxed it up, so that when we opened it up, we could see how beautiful it was. And so that's like a high point for me, is remembering the unveiling of the lion. But we didn't. It wasn't a problem. And then as far as getting stuff 86'd off the movie and it becoming CGI instead, I don't remember any of that happening on Jumanji. But CGI was so expensive in 1995 or 1994. Like, you know, now if a prop isn't working on a set, you know, it's like we're trying to fix it for 5 minutes and we can't, you know, they'll say we'll just fix it in post, kind of a thing. But back then CGI was exotic and expensive, and they were like extremely picky about which scenes were going to get the allotment for this and what scenes were going to get the allotment for that. So I don't remember that happening in Jumanji. It certainly happened later, but when it became more common.
Yeah, very cool that they decided to go with puppets instead of CGI here. That lion did look phenomenal.
The lion was good.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Anybody over there on the right?
I feel like Jumanji nails it when it comes to practical visual effects, and I'm just wondering what's a movie that you think nails it?
Well, some of my favorite things that I've ever witnessed in my career, a couple of them would have been on Jumanji. So the one that was the most, it was the The Stampede. Okay, so the Stampede coming through the bookcase. So I don't know, I think it's all over. You can see how they did it and everything like that. It was based, but it was a real bookcase. It was books and all that kind of stuff, balsa wood. It was a track, and there was like a steel welded armature that looked like the rhinoceros, and it had some, I think it was blue. And we were very excited on the day because we knew that we were going to kind of blow something up, and that's always a fun day on set, right? But they also kick you out. Like they always say, no, you can't be anywhere near here. And they basically had just a couple camera operators and all that. But I was handing out I was handing out the eye and ear protection, and Betsy kind of liked me. The AD kind of liked me, and she was in charge of safety, so she would let me kind of. But anyway, I'll never forget it because they basically said, action, and there was like a catapult, and it was I think they used compressed air on the catapult, and it blew through there and blew the books out, and it was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. It was very real, and we were sitting here watching the movie with my son, and like every time I see that, it's kind of like, wow, I remember the energy of that. Anyway, that was fun. The other thing that was really amazing was we went to the UBC tank. Okay, there's a research facility at UBC, and they use it for testing ship hulls and stuff like that. And it's a big swimming pool, and they'll let you film there. You have to arrange it and pay them whatever. And we went and we built the first floor and a half of the mansion there, and we did all that water work, the crocodile, the waterfall, the flood coming down the stairs, and we were there for a long time. And it was a big deal, right? Because you think about it, you've got water, you've got lights in the water, and they're the right lights. I mean, we were very safe on Jumanji, nothing bad happened, but we've got children in the water, and we've got the opportunity for a lot of bad things could have happened. They didn't, but so there was tremendous safety precautions taken, and the whole cruise and hip waders, and I don't know, it was fun. It was just you were on an adventure, right? You're just on an adventure when you're doing something like that, and it was very memorable.
Is this your favorite production you've worked on? Because it sounds amazing.
Well, no, it was good. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, definitely.
Right at the back.
One, my prop is the golden gun. Golden gun.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, great.
My question is, did you make the shoe?
Well, good question. Okay, so I'm going to admit something. I was supposed to make the shoe, and the shoe that gets cut up by the machine, and it was tricky because it was 1969. And really what we were trying to say was that Carl Bentley invented Nike. Carl Bentley imagined Nike, like the transition from, pair of shoes, the shoe factory that we saw there, that would have been a traditional New England shoe factory. Leather soles, leather tops, that kind of a thing. And what Carl was imagining was the 1974 itineration of Nike, where you've got, like a really kind of a high-tech running shoe kind of a thing. So yeah, I worked on the shoe, and I was kind of going on trying to make it look like, what if Parrish had taken the Nike concept? And I was doing prototypes, and it wasn't looking good. It wasn't, I knew it, Joe knew it, and we had a collaboration with Nike on the movie, and they started to help. They started to come in and provide us with some basically core pieces, and we sort of added to them. So in other words, yeah, I did the shoe, but it wasn't my best work on the show.
By the way, that Carl character too, talking about good actors in here, that David Allen Grier.
He's so funny.
It was so good.
So funny.
Okay, right in the middle here.
Do you remember your favorite day on set or in prep?
Favorite-
Your favorite day on set or in prep?
Yeah, okay, so the mansion. We shot the mansion interior on they called it the effects stage. They eventually called it the John Thomas effects stage, but when we worked there, it was the effects stage. And the effects stage was basically a bridge factory. that was poorly insulated, not soundproofed. Like a SkyTrain would go by and it would ruin the take. Okay, so but it was a great building. It was a great, we used it a lot. In Vancouver, did lots of big movies there. And so they built the mansion right in the middle of the effects stage. And Jim Bissell was our production designer. And again, an amazing guy and instrumental in me getting the job. He believed in me, so thank you, Jim. And Jim was a traditional designer. So when I remember, one of my favorite things about working on a movie was like whenever I go to work every day, and if I was on a big show, like a show that had big sets and all that, I would always go and see how the builds were coming along. I had nothing to do with it. Like it wasn't like I had to see how it was, making sure, it was like it was a completely different world for me. But it would give me a sense of excitement to see how the sets were looking. And it would also help inspire me if I had a question about the look of something. And I remember I'd go down to the mansion, and they had set up, it was an ornate New England mansion with beautiful moldings and plaster. They were making now we make everything out of foam. Everything's made out of foam and it's made on a machine. Or Jim Bissell set up a plaster shop. There was like, where do you find guys where do you find technicians in Vancouver in 1993 that know how to like screed plaster moldings? And it was like I walked in and I'd read about it. I'd never seen it before in my life. So the mansion was exquisite, right? And we shot it in different ways. So the way they usually do it in a movie, if a house is going to go through some action like that, is you always shoot it perfect first. So that's what we did. We shot the mansion, and it was like beautiful and sparkly and really, really looking good. And then we probably did the abandoned mansion next, where it's dusty and not so perfect. And then we left. We went and shot. We probably went to the tank. I actually think we went to the tank set because we were gone for a long time. And then the art department started doing the vines, right? And I remember going to the art department and just hanging out in prep. And they had these beautiful books of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And I hadn't been to Angkor Wat yet. My son and I had went since then and seen it in person, but I'd only seen it in pictures. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, these ficus roots growing out and twisting and turning and all over, and it was amazing. So I kind of knew it was coming with the vine. We called it the vine set. I kind of knew it was coming, but I'll never forget walking like the very first time back from being wherever we were. And walking on set, you got your breakfast sandwich in your hand and you walk on into the vine set for the very first time, and it was unbelievable. It was just, to me, it was just so real. And it was, the sculptural work and the vines and the way that they did everything, it was just, again, one of my top 10 favorite memories.
Yeah, amazing, great stories. Out of the corner of my eye, I see my friend Matthew waving at me. I think he has a question. Very cool. Good movie too.
Yeah, if you think about these props, like the Falcon, like the other ones that people mentioned, like the sled in Rosebud.
Yes.
Like the box, the puzzle box in Hellraiser, there's certain ones that kind of capture the cultural imagination that keep going. What makes a prop do that more than other ones? Because these are part of our collective memory. So how does that happen?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if you can distill it. I think there's sort of like a sort of a pop culture magic thing that happens sometimes, and there was all sorts of movies made when Citizen Kane was made, and and why is Rosebud the thing? I don't know. I love it though. I love the fact that something gets sort of swept up in that.
Yeah, sometimes the prop is the star.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. Who has one? Oh, right at the back.
So my favorite movie prop would be Luke's green lightsaber from Return of the Jedi.
Classic.
And my question, it was about Carl's shoe, so I'll slightly pivot it, but the question is, how many permutations of Carl's shoe, after it's destroyed everything, how many times did you have to, mess around with it till you got the version of the wrapped shoe to be the shoe you created?
Oh, well, I think we made a handful of the shoe, like that say Parish and appeared to be a Parish shoe. And I think I bought a electric carving knife from Walmart the same day I went to get the vibrator and the electric toothbrush. And I think I used an electric carving knife, and I just cut it different ways. And you sort of sit there, and once you've done 3 or 4 of them, you start to go, oh, this one looks cooler, this one looks more realistic. So that's probably how I did, I think.
Next, right in the center here.
Favorite prop would be Back to the Future's hoverboard. And my question is, how many rules did you guys come up with for the board game?
How many rules?
Yeah.
The rules were in the script. So you mean the printed rules that are on the...
Yeah, the ones that like appear out of the center of the board game.
Oh, that was in the script. So that was kind of like, and I really didn't have anything to do with that. I basically provided we talked about, can we project? And we talked about making it a practical thing. And then we decided, no, we're just gonna add it. So all of those things were scripted, probably early on. The early versions of the script would have had all of the clues, because the clues are really important. The clues set up everything, right? All the different bad things that happen. So yeah, that was mostly a writer or practical or a visual effect thing.
Was there any part of the script that was left out from the original script up until production?
Yeah, we were getting rewrites. Like if you look at my script is on top here, the red cover. So what they do is when you start a movie, all the pages are white, and then you get revisions. It's a good question. I don't remember how many revisions, but I could look. Like we could after I could because it's usually what happens is writers are constantly changing things, and they usually don't. Back in the day, I don't know how you do it now, but back in the day, the writers were always changing things. They're getting better ideas than their old idea. They run it by the director. The director, says, yeah, I like that idea. No, I don't like that idea. And then usually when you come in Monday morning, there's like a set of revisions on and you basically take your script apart, pull out all the old pages, put in the new pages, and it ends up becoming a rainbow. Like that script is a rainbow. It's got all these different changes to it. So.
Do you remember any of the changes?
I don't think so. It was a long time ago. I remember other things.
You remember the fish. More questions, okay, right there.
I have a question about Alan's outfit, mostly about the shell that he wears.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that and the process for that costume design?
Yes. Okay, so Martha Snetzinger was the costume designer. She was amazing. She ended up falling in love. She ended up falling in love with Jim Bissell, the production designer, on the movie. And I noticed it really early on. Like I sort of was like going, I think there's something going on here. Because we were actually flying to Boston and Jim kept coming back out of first class to talk to Martha. Anyway, and I don't think they were talking about the costumes. So Martha was the costume designer, and actually the helmet I did some accessories for him, but Martha did the helmet. However, I remember Martha was a friend of mine. Like Martha and Jim got married, and they live in Studio City now. So I haven't seen Martha in a long time. But anyway, Martha and I would hang out. Like we would have lunch together and talk about things. And she was talking about the helmet, the turtle helmet, basically. And in my collection, I had this amazing turtle helmet. Like it was bigger than what you'd put on your head, but it was magnificent. It was like a real tortoise. They're all restricted now, and you're not supposed to own this sort of thing. I had it. I don't even know how I got it. I found it in an antique store in the early '80s or something. So I brought it to work one day, and I said, if you can use this, use it. And so they loved the shape of it. And then Brian Dott, the guy who made the fish and a million other things on the movie, basically sculpted a smaller version and then Martha put some leaves and some things on. And then when the movie ended, just like Kent gave me this, Martha had like one unfinished turtle helmet, and she gave it to me. And I almost brought it today. It's it's sitting around somewhere in the house. Like, so next time I'll bring it. But it doesn't really look. It's just the shell. It doesn't have all the little things on it. It's not even painted. But it's just something that she gifted me when the show ended. So.
I have a question about the ownership of the props. Like, what happens to the props after a movie shoot is done? And I think these days people recognize the value of these props, but I feel like in the old days a lot of stuff got thrown out.
Oh, no, we didn't throw, no, it was, one of our responsibilities is to protect the work that we've done, right? So, no, there was a lot of stuff went back to Sony. So I was invited 2 years ago to the Sony archives in Culver City. Keith, sorry, I forget his last name. He was super kind. Invited me to the lockup, and they actually, it's an amazing experience to go there because they have like things they had an I Dream a Genie bottle there, which is actually one of my favorite. You want to talk about favorite props? Like my favorite sort of like 60s prop is probably the I Dream a Genie bottle. I love that. They had a real one there. They had stuff from King Kong, the original King Kong there, and then they had gotten out the forklift and they had brought down the two pallets of props from Jumanji, cardboard boxes, kind of squished, kind of dusty. They all had my handwriting on them still. They were the boxes that I'd shipped. We were going through them, and there was like, maybe it looks like some things had gotten moved around and stuff. I know that they used some of my stuff for the sequels. I know that they'd gotten access for some of that. I know that some of my pieces were on display somewhere in the Sony world. I think there was a display of a game board. It might have been one of the wood boards, one of the really good ones. But I didn't see that one. That wasn't in the archives, but I think it was on display in the executive offices, maybe. So no, we don't want to throw it any. We sort of know the value of these things, and
Yeah, it's great. It must feel good to see all that stuff protected.
yeah, no, it's great to see it again.
Okay, more questions. Anybody else have more questions?
I kind of had a question about Ellen Parrish's bike.
Yes.
Was it just one bike, or was there a few models, and how was it chosen?
Well, we wanted to show that Alan was a bit square, so he was riding a bike that really wasn't current. Like, the Bullies had the latest cool bike. The Bullies had Schwinn crate bikes, and the four guys who beat them up, they all had the coolest, newest bikes like
I
this.
think that's coincidence. It almost seemed like with Alan Parrish and with Sarah and Bully similar to the movie of Forrest Gump.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. So the last question is, how did you get into this industry in the first place?
Well, I was raised in Edmonton, and so I think I always kind of wanted and dreamed about working in the movies one day. But I was raised in Edmonton, so I didn't really. They didn't make movies in Edmonton. They made like TV in Edmonton, like TV stations and stuff like that. So I think when I was a little kid, I think I would. Well, I know I would. There was a junkyard in our neighborhood by the railroad tracks, and I would go there with my grandfather, and I would drag back sort of like junky, scrap irony pieces, maybe automotive pieces, and then he had a workshop. And I would be allowed to work in the workshop, and I would make stuff. And I was a kid. I remember doing this in elementary school, and I know it wasn't of any particular quality. It was stuff that was kind of making me feel good, and I would make up a story about it, and I would bring it to school, and I would tell my friends that, okay, one thing was a satellite. I said, this is a satellite. I made it out of valve covers off of a car, and nobody believed me. Because it was ridiculous. How would you, but I did that. Like it was something that I was trying to fool people with an object, and I was not able to. But that's how it started. And then, I did some prop work when I was in Edmonton. Before I came here, I was in television. I worked at a TV station, and I did prop work there. But I didn't really start to do anything substantial until I got here.
Okay, that's great. So I think we're going to wrap this up. Dan, thank you so much for coming here today, bringing some of these items and sharing your stories. It's so cool to hear about your experience on this movie. And if anybody wants to get a photo with the board, we're doing that, right, Dan?
Yeah, so I brought, this board here is one that I'm okay with people handling. I've got cotton gloves. I'd like it if you could, I have a lot of pair of cotton gloves. So put on some cotton gloves and I'll do the same. And then I don't know where the best place to do this is.
I guess we're doing it just right here at the
Right
bottom
here.
of the stairs.
You know, we could
Right by
just
the cos-
take a picture with the game if you want.
And then I put out posters for the episode of our podcast that we did with Dan on the movie Jumanji. So if you want to hear more, just scan that. You can get that episode. And I think there's a few additional stories in that as well.
Sounds good.
And thanks to the Property Masters Guild for putting this on. This was a fun event. I hope you guys do more.
Thank you so much.